Hi everyone. Welcome to an educational presentation from the Wildcat Sanctuary called The Truth About White Tigers. My name is Gina. I'm the Donor Services Coordinator at the Sanctuary, and part of my job is to support the education program with presentations like the one you're going to see today. We offer these presentations to our animal care interns, our media interns, our volunteers, and the AmeriCorps NCCC teams that serve with us. And so in this time of self-quarantine, we thought it would be a great opportunity to share a presentation with our social media family. So today we're going to talk about the truth about white tigers. I generally like to start presentations with a reminder about our mission and vision statement. Our mission at the Wildcat Sanctuary is to provide a natural sanctuary to wildcats in need and inspire change to end the captive wildlife crisis. So we use this as our lens to look through every time we're making a decision about what's going to happen at the Wildcat Sanctuary. It has to support this immediate need. And then our long-term vision is to eventually put ourselves out of business. We would much rather see animals living and thriving in the wild and not behind fences at all. In the meantime, we're going to take care of them as best we can and give them a life as close to wild as possible. But ultimately, we would rather see ourselves be put out of business. So the Wildcat Sanctuary considers itself a true sanctuary. As an outreach person for the sanctuary, I get a lot of questions where people send me links to other sanctuaries around the world and ask if they're good or not. And it can be really hard to tell, especially when you're on the internet. So this is to kind of help explain this for you a little bit. The way TWS operates, we do not buy, sell, exhibit, trade, lease, loan, auction, or breed any of our residents at the sanctuary. We are truly a place of refuge for these cats to live out their lives. When you're looking online, sometimes it can be hard to tell if that's what a sanctuary is doing or not. So you can look for their credentials and their accreditations. This is an example of how the Wildcat Sanctuary is accredited and a list of the organizations that we work collaboratively with. You'll see that TWS was accredited by the American Sanctuary Association in 1999, which was our first year in business. And then we were accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries in 2012, which was their first year in business. We've held both accreditations uninterrupted ever since they were awarded, and that's a great source of pride for us here at TWS. Additionally, you'll see that we are members of the Big Cat Sanctuary Alliance, the BCSA, and that is a national coalition of accredited and reputable sanctuaries that specifically care for wild cats. Some sanctuaries care for other animals such as bears, wolves, primates, all kinds of things. But here at TWS, we're cat people, so we're exclusively focused on cats, and we network with other sanctuaries that are also experienced and qualified to work with big cats in captivity. You'll see that we are also work with the University of Minnesota, as well as almost every law enforcement agency out there. And we are registered as a 501c3 nonprofit with the IRS. Sometimes it's easier to explain what we don't do. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Our primary goal is to care for the cats that live at TWS and do our best to try to prevent it from happening in the future. What we are not is we are not a rehab and release facility, even though we care for orphaned wild cats. We are not a law enforcement agency, even though we care for cats that have been seized by authorities. And we are not a conservation organization, even though we care for endangered species. And that's what we're going to dig into a little bit today is why white tigers do not contribute to conservation efforts. So we are going to get started and dig in a little bit deeper about white tigers and the truth behind them and why they are here. So if there's one thing that you take away from today, it's that white tigers have no conservation value at all. Regardless of what anybody tells you, there is no conservation value in white tigers. And we'll explain all that for you here today. They are not albino tigers. They are not snow tigers. They are not endangered royal white tigers. What they are is they're a result of a manipulation of a recessive gene. And to unlock that, to access a double recessive gene so that you get a white looking tiger, that means you have to inbreed. So it's, fathers being bred to daughters or relative to relative. And that is what creates the white color. It is estimated that there are hundreds of white tigers in captivity right now. And we're about 9 or 10 generations in from when the original first tiger that was white that was captured from the wild in 1951. And I will dig into that story as well today too. So the term generic tiger, that is a term that is used because we've kind of entered a new world in captive wild animals. So in the wild, many of you know that tigers have several subspecies, such as Bengal tigers, Sumatran tigers, Siberian tigers, right? There's a few of them. In captivity, what happens is that those facilities that are doing their darndest to produce as many cubs as possible disregard subspecies lines. So that means they're breeding a little bit of Bengal plus a little bit of Siberian and mixing it all together. And so there's no true subspecies line, and that's why there's no conservation value for these cats at all. White tigers, because they're inbred, they also fall under that umbrella of generic tigers. As you can imagine, an inbred cat that has been specifically manipulated to show one of its most vulnerable traits does not do very well in the wild and therefore doesn't have any conservation value. So generic tigers are either a mix of subspecies, kind of mutts, if you will, or they've been a result of inbreeding, and therefore generic tigers have no conservation value at all. And that's the surprising part for people. Tigers in the wild are endangered, but tigers in captivity are overpopulated. Something kind of weird to get your head around, but it's the reality is that we have an overpopulation problem of generic tigers in captivity in this country. Okay. So why is the white color recessive? Well, bluntly, it is a disadvantage for an apex predator not to be able to camouflage into their surroundings. So I realize this picture is a little bit of a cheat in that I have an orange tiger against a brown background and a white tiger against a green background, but it's just to highlight the point that there is no camouflage option for tigers that are white. And so that is a huge disadvantage for a predator and a hunter. And it's thought that tigers that are born in the wild that are white typically don't live very long because of that disadvantage. The estimates are that there are 1 in 10,000 tigers born in the wild are white. 1 in 10,000. If you look at stats today, you'll see that there's an estimate of around 3,500 to 4,000 tigers in the wild right now. So the chances of one of them being white is very, very low. And that's because, Mother Nature designed it that way. So if you hear someone trying to tell you that breeding white tigers is helping conservation efforts and helping preserve an endangered species, this is the rebuttal to that, is that the white tiger is a recessive gene, and it is actually a disadvantage for them in the wild, and therefore there is no conservation value. So when you're inbreeding to get a specific color, you also get some other things too that you don't necessarily expect. This is a picture of Kenny, who was a white tiger that lived at a rescue down in Arkansas. He has since passed away, but he is a very well-known tiger. If you've ever seen a presentation about white tigers, you've probably seen a picture of Kenny. So this is just to show that in addition to the white color, which in actuality is a disadvantage, we as humans, when we see it in captivity, think it's cool and pretty, but out in the wild, it's actually a disadvantage. And along with that comes some other things too. In Kenny's case, he had misshapen skull and a cleft palate, which is very commonly seen in inbred tigers. There's a lot of problems with their eyes, with white tiger eyes. You may have seen some photos of our tigers Mohan or Jeremy and Simon where they're kind of squinting into the sun, and it's because they're trying to reduce the amount of light coming in because there is such sensitivity in their eyes. We also see cross eyes with all white tigers. We can see kidney problems. We can see cleft palates, clubbed feet, shortened tendons, and even some neurological disorders that can come with that. Mostly all contributed to the inbreeding that happens to get this white color. So genetics are somewhat predictable, but not 100% predictable. So there's a variety of colors that come out of this inbreeding process. And the numbers that are used most commonly is that there needs to be about 30 cubs born for one of them to be a successfully born white tiger. The other 29 could be orange tigers. They could have deformities at birth. They could be stillborn. There's a whole bunch of things that happen to those other 29 cubs. And if it's a breeder who's specifically looking for white, sometimes those orange cubs become a liability and they're euthanized very, very early on, which is a tragedy. Neonatal mortality rates when breeding white tigers is upwards of 80% of a death rate, which is staggering. Usually what happens is they're breeding so many cats to get those few healthy whites that they are directly contributing to the overpopulation problem of tigers in captivity. So in addition to the health problems that individual cats will suffer, the larger concern is that the population is just exploding and rescues can't keep up with it at all. So I'm going to play a little video for you here of something that was produced by Judson, who many of you know from our Facebook channels. And this underscores quite a bit of what I've said so far.
White tigers are simply Bengal tigers. They're not albinos, and they're not a separate species, as many people think. They result when two Bengal tigers who carry a recessive gene controlling coat color are inbred with each other. It's been said that the entire white tiger population originated from one single white tiger captured in the wild and has been inbred ever since. In order to retain this recessive gene, zoos and breeders must continually inbreed father to daughter, father to granddaughter, and so on. The same gene that causes white fur also causes many other genetic problems like cleft palates, scoliosis of the spine, mental impairments, and crossed eyes. Sadly, as many as 80% of inbred tiger cubs often die. Cubs are disposed of by breeders when they're born with deformities. To get that one perfect white tiger magicians and entertainers want, tigers are forced to produce as many as 30 cubs. The other 29 cubs who aren't perfect, who are born orange, who are very little value to those breeders, are many times euthanized. White tigers are simply a novelty with no conservation value at all. They're very rare in the wild for a reason. Possibly as few as 1 in 10,000 wild tiger births result in a white cub. They're a genetic mutation that Mother Nature eliminates. The odds are against them being able to survive infancy to adulthood in order to reproduce and pass on this mutant gene. White is quite obviously terrible camouflage for a predator who must hunt to survive. The Wildcat Sanctuary is currently home to 5 white tigers: Mohan, Simon, Jeremy, Nikita, and Callie. There have been others in the past, and sadly there will be more in the future. They are not rare in captivity. On the contrary, almost every accredited sanctuary in the country has rescued white tigers. So, it's up to us to stop supporting the cruelty involved in displaying these mythical, non-existent species. We understand their allure, but now that you know the suffering behind their beauty, we hope you'll help educate others about the sad truth behind white tigers.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it underscored some of the important information. I know it's a lot. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into the story that I alluded to earlier of the first white tiger that was captured from the wild, and that was in 1951 in India. It was a male tiger cub, and they named him Mohan. And you know, like humans do, when we see something unusual in the wild, we capture it and put it in a cage and study it. And that's basically what happened, is that Mohan was captured in 1951. He was a young subadult at the time. As we mentioned earlier, they don't live very long in the wild if they're white, and so he was a younger cub. And there was a legend in India at the time of a white tiger um, being a mythological figure, and so it was really breathtaking when they actually found one in the wild for the first time. So again, this is 1951, and this is what I'm pretty sure, is a picture of that first white tiger captured named Mohan when he was living in the court. You'll see today a lot of white tigers are named Mohan, including one that we have here at the Wildcat Sanctuary, and this is where that name comes from. So Mohan was captured in 1951, and it took until 1958 to get the first successfully bred litter of white tigers. So 7 years, 6 to 7 years into the process. They tried and did a couple different things and couldn't quite make it work until they bred Mohan to his daughter, and that's when they were able to access the white color. Coincidentally, the last white tiger to be seen in the wild was also in 1958. As far as we know, no one has seen a white tiger in the wild since then. So very interesting to note that the first successfully bred litter of captive white tigers was the same year the last wild white tiger was seen. The pandemonium started to spread, and pictures of this white tiger got out. And when Mohan was successfully bred, he had a litter, and one of those cubs was a little female named Mohini, and she was sold to a businessman who gave the cat to the National Zoo. And this was in the 1960s, that kind of kicked off white tiger craze that started to happen. This was a very novel thing, and a lot of people haven't seen this before, and so it got to be really, really exciting when these cats started to show up in zoos. By the 70s and 80s, they had become very popular and were almost rebranded in a way that we started to see them branded as their own separate subspecies, needing the cause of breeding to help them survive. So at the bottom of this poster that you see from Las Vegas, you may not be able to read it, but it says, "The quest to save the world's magnificent royal white tigers and magical white lions for future generations." So very much implies conservation, even though it doesn't say so, when in reality, now we know that that's not what's happening here. Zoos all over the world began breeding white tigers because they became very popular, and it brought a lot of customers and traffic through the zoos, but the message wasn't quite right. So by the 1990s, we started to see the overpopulation throttle hit its max. Again, tigers, true subspecies of tigers, are endangered in the wild, but generic tigers, including white tigers, are overpopulated in captivity. And by the 90s is when we really started to see this overpopulation hit its max and demand rescue. Like, this is when a lot of sanctuaries started to be established, including the Wildcat Sanctuary. White tigers were on the rise, which meant that orange tiger populations were on the rise. So the need for rescue began to expand and expand. Right now, we're estimating that there are several hundred in captivity at the Wildcat Sanctuary. These are the ones that we've rescued here. This is Jeremy, Simon, Callie, Nikita, Mohan, and Sierra, who was a cat that passed away several years ago. So as knowledge was spread and as people started to learn more, large organizations started to step up to try to help curb more breeding of white tigers. So in 2011, there was a very important ban implemented by the American Zoological Association, and that banned any private breeding program of white tigers. You can read through this slide about all of the things that they acknowledged, including that there is no conservation value for these cats at all. And so that's very important because the zoos, the accredited zoos, I want to make that clear, the accredited zoos really have the population's attention and are looked to as an educational resource. And so even though sanctuaries like the Wildcat Sanctuary are not governed by the AZA, we think it's very important that we have parallel messaging. So when the AZA banned white tiger breeding programs, that was a huge win for education efforts everywhere because we knew that would reach more people. So now you will see that accredited zoos will not display or breed white tigers. And if they have white tigers in their population and are looking to get accredited, that's where we can partner together for the better life of the cat. So for example, Jeremy and Simon, you can read their story and how they came from a zoo that shut down their white tiger breeding program. So not only did we get to rescue those two tigers individually, we also got to help shut down a larger element that was contributing to the problem of overpopulation. So there is a lot of help on the way, which is great. I've mentioned the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, and this is their map from their website. These are all the accredited and verified sanctuaries that care for big cats. And they are all in our network. We partner with everybody together because this problem is bigger than just one sanctuary. So it's really important for us to have a national network of support. And this is that national network. The Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries website is a great one to be able to find a sanctuary for almost any species, almost anywhere in the world, if you are traveling and you want to practice good tourism. So these are our partners around the world, and these are really important people to help us solve this problem and help rescue as many captive wildcats as possible. There are things that you can do. I know sometimes it feels like such a big problem that you think you're a small drop in the bucket, but there's definitely things that you can do. The biggest one is the Big Cat Public Safety Act, which is on the table right now in the Senate. I believe it's passed its committee in the House, and so we're just kind of waiting on action. But right now is not the time to be pushing this too much, other than to say, voicing your support of this bill to your representatives is a great way to act on behalf of the cats, even if you're just one person. That's exactly what we're supposed to be doing here and informing those who represent us. And so if you feel strongly about ending captive wild animals, this is a huge step in getting us there. It's not going to solve everything, but it's going to solve a lot for us. And finally, if you are interested in learning more about the captive wildlife crisis, there's a ton of great documentaries out. These are the ones that we recommend for our interns and volunteers. If you only watch one, I recommend watching Elephant in the Living Room. I think that does a great job of describing the world that we work in as the Wildcat Sanctuary, but it also really shows you the way that rescues can work with owners for the better of the animals. Sometimes it's a long road, but doing it in a way that makes the private owner feel that they're doing the best for the animals is really important for the long-term care of the cat. So that's our main goal here, and I think you can see that in this documentary, even though it's not about TWS. But I encourage you to look these up. They should all be available on Netflix and Hulu and all the things. but they're great ones to learn a little bit more about what we do here at the sanctuary. And that's all I have together for you today. We would love to answer any questions that you have. You're welcome to put them in as a comment on this thread or send us an email at info@wildcatsanctuary.org, and we will do our best to get back to you and answer those questions. And we hope to come back with some more educational presentations in the future. So if there's something you want to learn about, please let us know. Thank you so much for all your support and for everything you do for the Wildcat Sanctuary. We hope everyone is doing well in these uncertain times. And if we can be a little bit of a relief to show you pictures of cute cats or help you learn something new, we really want to be here for you in that time. So thank you very much for all your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.